My brother called on a Tuesday morning to tell me our parents had left me nothing. His voice was calm, almost rehearsed. He said the estate had been settled, the house, the retirement accounts, the investment portfolio. All of it was going to him. He said they'd changed the will, that I should have known. I was holding my phone so tightly my knuckles went white. This is my inheritance revenge story. My parents built everything carefully. My father ran a small manufacturing business for 30 years. My mother kept the books. They weren't flashy rich, but they were deliberate. The house was paid off. There were retirement accounts, a brokerage portfolio they'd been adding to since the 90s. My father also held a small parcel of farmland he leased out. When I was in my mid-30s, they sat us both down and explained the plan. Equal shares. Everything would be split evenly. My brother had even joked about eventually selling the house. It had never sounded complicated. I assumed that was settled. I was wrong. Marcus lived 20 minutes from my parents. I was 6 hours north. I called every week, came for holidays, sent money when care costs came up. When my father's health declined, Marcus handled the logistics, doctor appointments, bills, daily decisions. I trusted him. I didn't ask for details. When my father passed after a sudden stroke, I was still sorting through condolence cards 2 weeks later when Marcus called again. He said there was a new will, signed just weeks before my father died. He said our parents had decided to leave everything to him because he'd been physically present. He mentioned lawyer fees. He said the estate was smaller than I remembered. I told him I'd call him back. I went straight to the filing cabinet. The trust document was exactly where my mother had placed it, dated 9 years ago. Both signatures on every page. My name listed as co-beneficiary alongside Marcus. The house named explicitly as a trust asset. The brokerage accounts listed by institution. I read it twice standing at the cabinet. Then I brought it to the kitchen table and read it again. I remembered something my mother had said when they set this up. She said, "This protects the house no matter what." I hadn't understood what that meant at the time. I was starting to. I pulled the property address from the trust and checked it against the county assessor's website. The house was still recorded as a trust asset. The title had never been changed. Then I searched my email archive and found a message from my parents' attorney sent 14 months ago, addressed to both Marcus and me. A routine notice confirming the trust was still active. No amendments had been filed. 14 months ago. 4 months before the alleged new will was signed. I screenshotted everything. My parents had given me limited view access to their brokerage accounts years earlier so I could help them track performance. The login still worked. I opened the account history. There had been a series of transfers over the previous 18 months. Not large individually, but they totaled just over $74,000. Every withdrawal routed to the same external account. One I didn't recognize. Not my parents' checking. Not any account I'd ever seen. My hands weren't shaking until that moment. Then they were. I also scrolled through the trust brokerage account my mother had once shared with me for emergencies. The balance was still intact. No withdrawals, no transfers. Marcus hadn't moved anything there. Not yet. I found an estate attorney through a colleague. Before our first call, I sent her the trust document, the property record, the attorney's notice, and the transfer history. She called me back the same afternoon. She told me a revocable living trust controls the assets held inside it, regardless of a later will. If the house was titled into the trust and the title was never formally removed, a new will couldn't touch it. A will can only distribute assets the deceased personally owned at the time of death. The house wasn't in my parents' personal estate. Then she paused. They forgot about the trust. That was the moment the entire picture came into focus. Marcus had spent 18 months quietly positioning himself. He'd been present for the new will signing. He'd almost certainly guided that conversation. He had assumed a new will superseded everything. He didn't understand how a trust worked. And either the attorney who drafted the new will hadn't known the house was already in a trust or hadn't been told. That was the crack in the entire structure. A $74,000 crack and a house worth considerably more. 2 days after I retained my attorney, my phone rang. It was Marcus. His voice sounded different. Careful. "Hey," he said. "I've been going through some of Dad's accounts. There's a trust involved, with the house and one of the investment accounts. I think we'll probably need to coordinate on it." I looked at the trust document open on my kitchen table. "Yes," I said. "We will." My attorney filed a formal claim against the estate within 10 days. We submitted the trust document, the unaltered property title, the account transfer records, and the 14-month-old attorney notice confirming the trust was still active. Marcus hired his own attorney. His first response was that I had abandoned my role in the family and forfeited any reasonable expectation of inheritance. My attorney sent back the trust with the relevant sections highlighted. Legal abandonment is not a clause in a revocable living trust. The mediation ran 4 months. Marcus argued that our parents had expressed their intentions verbally, that I hadn't contributed to their care, that the trust was outdated and no longer reflected their wishes. The document didn't change because he said those things. My name was in the trust. The house was in the trust. The brokerage accounts were in the trust. Once we submitted the forensic account documentation on the $74,000, his attorney stopped raising that issue entirely. The settlement was finalized on a Wednesday. The house proceeds were split per the trust terms. The brokerage accounts distributed according to the original beneficiary designations. The $74,000 addressed in the final distribution. Marcus and I haven't spoken since. I still keep the trust document in the same filing cabinet where it's always been. My mother handed it to me and said it would protect the house no matter what. She knew exactly what she was doing. Most people who go through something like this never find the document in time. After everything was finalized, I started hearing from more of them than I expected. Families who discovered a trust too late, or never discovered it at all. The clause that saved everything was 1 sentence long. Assets to be divided equally between both beneficiaries. For years, I thought it was just paperwork. It turned out to be the only sentence that mattered.